Welcome to the 12th Annual Naples International Film Festival and this very special TalkBack Q&A. We'd like to thank our TalkBack Q&A sponsors, Stan and Saran Crosshar, for supporting these wonderful TalkBack Q&As and this opportunity to hear from some of our filmmakers. My name is David Filner. I'm the Executive Vice President, Artistic Operations at Artis Naples, and I'm very pleased to welcome two filmmakers from one of our shorts packages, BACTERIUM, DELIRIUM. Welcome, Francis and Nicole.
Hello, David. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be able to chat with you. It's really fun, cute film that you put together.
Thank you.
Can we start out, maybe talk a little bit about yourselves, how you met, and then how this film was created, like the genesis of the film?
Yes. I'll go first. Well, I'm Francis. I was born in Cuba, and I moved to the States, and then I studied art, and then I went to Ringling, and then I met Nicole. It was a very brief life summary, and we were like, hey, you want to do a film with each other? And we both nodded, and then we did it. That's my part of the story.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, we got coffee and talked about it. Coffee with honey, still remember. And then talked about like the kind of stories that we liked. And then because like the stories we liked were very similar, we decided.
And where were you at this point when the two, for those of you who don't know your biographies, where were you when you met?
We were at, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we were both studying computer animation at Ringling College. And it was our, usually like third year, you pick your, like if you want to do your thesis with a person or you want to do solo and how many people you want to do it with. So yeah, it's about like halfway through third year.
Okay. So was this your thesis project, this film?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure you graduated with flying colors with this.
Yeah, it was crazy because of the whole world pandemic. So we really had to transfer all of our programs onto like our remote areas.
Yeah.
So it was a lot, but you know, we did it. So
Yeah.
that's good.
So when you're doing an animated film like this, and especially with the two of you, and you're, I think, officially co-directors, is that correct?
Yes.
How do you divide up that work, and especially in the context of a pandemic?
Nicole, do you want to go?
Well, like all the work is divided almost 50-50. So Francis and I, we both have like our strong points and like what we want to major in. In computer animation, we learn everything. So we do the whole pipeline. So with the story, everything was done like we did it together. Like we wrote the story together, we wrote the dialogue together. Everything was like, there was a lot of discussion. It was very much 50-50. And then when it came to like concept art and stuff, we also both did like our own explorations, but at every stage, like, of course, like discussing with each other. But it was always like, Francis would draw something, I would draw something, and then we would look at it and then we would like see how we combine it or something like that. And then in the end, like the final concept art was drawn by Francis. Because Francis wants to be a concept artist. And then like later on, like through the production stage, like modeling and all of that, like I modeled the human characters and Francis modeled the bacteria characters. And then like with rigging, it was the same thing. Like I was in charge of rigging the human characters and she was in charge of rigging the bacteria characters. So it's very much 50-50. With animation, we divide them by shots. So like however many shots and then just divide it equally, like based on like numbers and yeah.
Great. So with animation, I'm certainly not an expert on how animation works, but I imagine that there's a pretty heavy, both technical side of doing a film like this, as well as obviously the creative side that a live action filmmaker would be dealing with. Do you find that one side of that is either you're more interested in or more easy, or how does that dichotomy of those two things work, the sort of the artistic and then the technical?
I think that for me, I think for both of us, but I'm gonna say for me, but I think Nicole agrees that the setup for a 3D animated film is a lot. It's so much setup. It takes us it took us like about a year and a half to get the concept art and the 3D models and the rigging like done, and then a few months that we got to put in for animation. And even while we were animating, we were still updating the program of the character, the way that they move and stuff. With every shot, we would notice like, oh, that character really can't bend that far, so we have to take that in. And that would take us that would set us back like 2 days, because the programming just wouldn't work with the shape that we wanted to force them into.
Yeah.
I wish we could force actors to move that way, but it doesn't work like that. So
It's always,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's also because our film is very stylized and very much cartoony, very 2D-esque. A big part of it was translating 2D into 3D and trying to figure out how shapes will work in a three-dimensional space when it's drawn from 2D. Yeah.
So when you are studying animated film, do you have to do projects with live action? Is that part of what you do with the live action kind of thing, to get a sense of people's movements and things like that? Or is it really focused just on the computer animated things?
We shoot a lot of reference. Yeah, we shoot a lot of reference.
And so by reference, you mean that live action versions of people doing those things?
Yeah. We'll pull our friends aside, or mostly ourselves, really. And yeah, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes, it's dangerous.
Sometimes it is dangerous.
Yeah, you think you can do the thing that the character is doing, but you can't, and that's okay.
So when you're, you sort of touched on it briefly, but are there things where you have to actually change the story in some way because of the technical considerations that you're dealing with? Or does it feel like you can kind of do anything you want, and it's just a question of finding the way to make the technique work for you?
It's kind of 50-50, I would say. It's a lot of it is about also working around the technological limitation. So yes, there are limits. For example, we are not FX artists, so water is mostly out of the question. It takes a long time to do stuff like that. So coming into the project, we know all of these things, what are all the limitations, and then we use that knowledge and then use what kind of story we want to tell, and then work around that to push for what we want. So for example, when Francis was talking earlier about how we push the characters to bend their bodies to make weird shapes, usually that's a sort of a style of animating. You don't always have to animate that way, but we wanted to do it that way. And then in parts of it, there's also a 2D aspect, and then so it's we try to, so with the 2D aspect, it's impossible to build in the amount of time we had, almost impossible for two people to build that many characters,
20 characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So our spin on that was to turn it into a 2D portion, of course, making sure that the story makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our work around the technical limitations and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I concur.
So have you graduated? Are you graduated from the program?
Yes.
And so then what's next with the film and both your careers, both separately and together? Are you working on other projects together?
That's such a scary question. Do you want to go first, Nicole?
We currently know, because we're working on our own stuff right now, but we are doing stuff for the film where our release is coming up on 10th of October, so it's very, very soon, a few days. And we've been working a lot on the merch for the film and promoting the film for the release and stuff. So that we've been doing together. And then we've also just been working on our own stuff. I think Francis is also working freelance, and I'm working freelance right now. So we have like other stuff going on right now, and then maybe in the future we'll work together again.
Yeah, it would be cool to like unfold something, but at the moment, it's just like, oh my gosh, so many things are happening with the world and our lives. So yeah.
Okay, good. Is there anything else with the film that was anything in particular that was, you know, a funny story, something interesting that happened with the making of the film that you want to share? You don't have to.
I have a really funny story.
Okay.
Actually, this is really weird because at our school at Ringling, you can either be in a partner of 2 or 3, or you could be by yourself. And me and Nicole had spent most of our writing time at like Starbucks and like cafes and stuff, just to like avoid being surrounded by so much stress so constantly. And I think like you get so tired and like overworked that you come up with like the dumbest ideas. And I was like, hey, Nicole, what about this? What about like this film about these 2 girls and they turn to bacteria? And then kind of for a second we were like, maybe. And then both of us were like, no, let's not do that. That's dumb. And then we like kind of flushed it out just to like keep it at, you know, in our pocket in case it didn't pass the rounds of a critique, because we have like these master critiques where all of the professors are in a room and they judge you and they like Roman style throw you to the lions.
Wow.
And in a good way. They're very nice people. You know, we pitched our bacteria story and they really liked it. So it almost didn't get made at all. So that's cool.
Well, I think that's about all for now. Thank you so much for joining us, and really thank you so much for sharing this film with us. It really is just a joy to watch, and it's just amazing that you as just, you know, as your students' project, it really is incredible. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to introduce Nick Sherman, whose film BABAM is part of our student showcase. Nick, welcome.
Hello. Thank you guys for this honor.
Well, we're so happy to have the film. So obviously we're in Naples, but let's start out by where are you right now? Where were you talking to us from?
I'm from I'm talking to you from Anaheim, California, where things are a little weird right now, but it's okay.
Good. Well, let's jump into the film. So tell me a little bit about how you came up with this really fun sort of superhero-ish kind of movie.
It's pretty weird because like I have like in my high school class and stuff, and like I wanted to do something like try, like I always do something to go like test my boundaries and see how far I can take my limits, and I've never like worked with visual effects or anything like to that degree. So like Shazam came out and I saw it and I was like oh my god, like I could totally like spin this but not like do exactly the movie, like something completely different, but like take the inspiration of like the superhero and just do totally new idea and story. Because I always like also wanted to like tell like a voiceover story as well. Just trying new things, you know, seeing if like what works and what doesn't. Like I'm young, so like I'm trying like not to like I'm trying to fail as much as I can, so I can like grow as a filmmaker.
Yeah. So just to be clear about it, you're still in high school.
I just graduated.
Just graduated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a amazing amount of work for a high school student. How did you? What kind of training did you have to put together a film like this?
I didn't have like much training. I just kind of like my sophomore year, my teacher was like, you should like I love film and I love like all of it, but I never like thought about it. And he's like, you should try it. And I like was like I didn't like I kind of didn't have a place in high school at the time yet. You know, I was still bouncing around. Like I enjoy sports, but it wasn't like my thing. But I fell in love with like film, and then like from that point on, I just like did everything I could to learn as much as I could in like the shortest amount of time. So most of my training at that point was just like, you know, on YouTube or like masterclass or just getting some advice from like my teacher, my mentor.
Yeah. So obviously, a huge part of any film is the actors. Can you tell a little bit about how you found the actors and what it was like to be directing people who I assume maybe they were friends or were people that, how did that work?
It's pretty funny because like the voiceover is my dad, and I've never like actually like worked with my dad before, and he's a horrible actor, so it took so long to like figure that out. But the rest of them are just like, they're my friends or classmates. They kind of just like they see how much I care, and I think they were like, okay, we gotta like go all out for it for him and for it. But it was pretty easy because like I kind of like showed them and like told them exactly like what I wanted and how to did it. It's all fun because it's like working with your friends and stuff. So like we can laugh at the same time while actually working.
Yeah. So what do you think was the biggest learning that you had from making this film?
Oh, there's a lot. I'd say like, well, the crazy part about this was we have like a high school broadcast, and like once a month we have a special like cinematic one. So my challenge of it was like SNL posted some YouTube video about how they created the digital shorts within like a week's time, and I was like, I wonder if I can do the same, like create like a whole short film in like 5 days. So that's exactly like, I think like I learned a lot about like deadlines and like working on it and kind of like pushing myself and figuring out how like I work best. I learned how like I work best under stress and like time limits. Also like pacing and stuff. I threw a lot of stuff in 5 minutes. I don't know how I even figured that out, but I guess the biggest thing I learned was like how to like effectively do something in like a really short amount of time.
Excellent. Well, it's very highly paced. So what are your plans now that you've graduated? Are you going to go to film school, do something like that, focus on film, or what are your future plans?
Oh, 100%. I like, you know, it was one of those like, for so long I was kind of just like, I don't know if like, cause like there's a lot of like doubters, you know. It's like I see a bunch of scary stuff that like you never know what's gonna happen, or it's like a tough industry. But at this point, I think I'm like, there's nothing more I could possibly see myself doing. So right now I'm just like, I'm trying to get into a couple film schools. I'm applying like right now as we speak, and hopefully like I can land somewhere and hopefully land somewhere in a good school. That way I can like all the good students and staff around me can push me to be like the best as I possibly can.
Yeah. Would you have any recommendations if there are other young people who are watching this and want to get into film? Any recommendations on what they can do?
Yeah, I kind of say like first make sure like this is like something that like makes you happy, because a lot of people I know is kind of like, it's not like, I don't know if they didn't know for sure, but like figure out if it like individually like makes you happy. I always like watch that like Spielberg video where he talks about like the whisper and how like tinkles his heart. It like doesn't come straight at you. There's the dream will always whisper, and that's when you know that like it's something you want to do. I think about that all the time, and I'd say just like gain a work ethic and put in the time. And if it's like something you love, it doesn't seem like time flies by in like a minute.
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing this film, and congratulations on all this work as a high school student. It's really incredible, and I'm sure there'll be great things coming from you in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. Now, I'm very happy to welcome our youngest filmmaker this year, and perhaps one of our youngest filmmakers ever, Mason Mirabile. Mason, welcome.
Thanks.
So obviously we're in a virtual festival. Can you tell us before we get into your film, where are you right now? Where are you talking to us from?
I'm in Arlington, Virginia.
Excellent. Well, we were so happy to have your film as part of our Student Filmmaker showcase this year. And I just had a couple questions for you. First of all, how did you get interested in filmmaking?
I think when I was 7, my dad showed me how to do stop motion in Final Cut Pro. And I think every year and every project film I did, I just learned more and more from him.
Yeah, excellent. And you must like filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So your film was about climate change. That's kind of a big topic for a 10-year-old especially. What kind of got you inspired to make a film about climate change?
I think it's a growing issue and it's very important. And I wanted to show kids that they can make a difference. And I probably learned about climate change in 2nd or 3rd grade when I was 8 or so.
Uh-huh. So the information then you had, were you learning as well as when you were doing the film, were you learning about that, talking to those people that you were talking to, or was that information you already had and you just were kind of sharing it with others?
I didn't understand the question.
He's asking if you already knew everything that the experts were telling you, or if they were giving you new information.
Okay. I think I knew a lot of the basic stuff that they were telling me about, like that it was getting worse and that there were a lot of protesters, but I think I didn't know like a lot of the facts, like I think Nikhil said by 2050 all of the ice in the Arctic would be melted in the summer. And I think that really surprised me.
Okay. So with the filmmaking, what was the biggest bit that you learned about being a filmmaker from making this film?
I think I didn't know how many people were protesting, and I was surprised at how many of them were kids. And I also learned how to do multicam editing in this film, which is when you have like multiple cameras showing something and you cut between them.
Excellent. So now that is this your first film, by the way?
No, I've probably made maybe 5 films that I've worked a lot on.
Yeah. Okay. And so what are your future filmmaking plans? Do you think you're something you want to study more intensely and maybe when you get older to become a filmmaker professionally?
I actually just finished a film like yesterday about my little brother Asher. The film is called Brotherhood, and it's about me showing him how to do different things like drawing, gardening, and playing the piano. I wrote the music for that one, just like I wrote the music for Never Too Small. And I'm going to enter in the PTA Reflections contest, and I also entered Never Too Small in that contest.
And so you're planning on continue making films as you go on. Well, it's excellent. It's amazing. And you are, how old are you again?
I'm 10.
10 years old. It's incredible what you did as a 10-year-old with this film, and you should be very, very proud of what you've done, because it's not only a great message, but it's a great film. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. And I think that's about all we need, all we have. And so thanks again for taking the time and for sharing your film with us.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pause it there, cut it off there, but really thank you for taking some time, and really congratulations on the film. We really enjoyed watching it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and best of luck in the future. Hello, I'd like to now welcome the writer and director of 1 Minute to Midnight, James Brammer. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a nice film that you did, really sophisticated. And can you tell us, you're still in high school?
Yeah, I'm a junior in high school now, and I made 1 Minute to Midnight last year as a sophomore.
Yeah, it's amazing. Tell us a little bit about what, I guess, got you interested in filmmaking in general, and then specifically why this film?
So when I I used to be an actor into acting when I was younger, and then I kind of phased out of that. But when I went to high school a few years ago, my high school, Ballard High School, has a great filmmaking program, and I attended the local screenings while in middle school for a couple of years. And so I was very familiar with the program, and I needed an elective to fill, so I chose that. And coming from a background in acting, I thought that filmmaking would be really interesting. And I just thought it would be just an elective, but it's transformed into a passion, really, and my favorite class in school. And I've done a lot of projects, and I've really developed quite a passion for filmmaking. Um, and and then, was your second question about?
About this film in particular, what inspired this particular story? Why did you want to tell the story? How did you come up with it?
Okay, yeah. So it was for a project for my film class, and the project was just a visual story, and I wanted to do something that kind of went outside the student norm. In my freshman year, I did a couple short films that were very conventional student films, and so I wanted to do something different. And I've always been a fan of the sci-fi genre, and you don't normally see sci-fi period pieces as in student films. And so I thought that to really defy the student norm, I would make a sci-fi film, and I really enjoy sci-fi, so I really enjoyed writing that. And then specifically with the story of 1 Minute to Midnight, it kind of just unfolded, um, and I kind of just developed that story and really got into it and the sci-fi setting, and I really also wanted to have fun with the props and the whole production design, which is another reason why I chose to make this film specifically.
Yeah, it was one of the things that's really I thought was interesting about the film is that with just a few smart choices with kind of the props and the things, it sets a scene of a future date. Did you have a hard time coming up with the right kind of look and feel for this to get that sci-fi futuristic thing that you were going for?
Yeah, so it took quite a few attempts, and everything was kind of makeshift, just what would look good in this world that we were creating here, and we just set it a couple decades from now in 2063 and 2064. So it's close enough to present day that we could use a lot of items from present day, but it was in the future enough that we can make some things a little more futuristic. And one thing that I really wanted to avoid was making things feel cheesy or not so realistic. And so my main focus was to make the whole set and all the props and the entire setting look very natural and realistic. What would you find in 2063 in a NASA research laboratory? And so that kind of guided my production design.
So the one actor in this, from the credits, it looked like he happened to have the same last name as you. Is there a connection there?
Yeah, that's my dad, actually. And how that came about is we were having trouble getting an actor for this, and so I thought my dad was kind of a last minute decision, but he actually proved to be very, very good. And I think because he had no acting background, so a lot of theater actors that we sometimes get they're trained to have very not mild expressions. They're very dramatic, and so they're not the best for film acting. And so what my dad provided was just a kind of an untrained actor that we could direct, and I thought he did a good job of following directions and reciting dialogue, and it turned out, and he looked the part too. I wanted kind of just a middle-aged male for Dr. Shuglar, and he just happened to fit that part. So that's how that came about.
I thought he did a great job. And were there any, obviously with you as the director directing your own parent, were there any concerns? Were there any issues with that of you being in charge of your dad in this environment?
Well, I think he enjoyed it, kind of watching me take command, and he was very flexible and just kind of just sitting there for hours as we got the shot right, and I thank him for that. And it was very convenient having him with us because he would drive and be there to a location, and so the convenience was a big factor. That was great, but there's also a sense of comfort as well, knowing that it's not an unfamiliar actor, it's my dad, and so I wasn't afraid to give him harsh direction and criticism. I wasn't too harsh, but sometimes when you work with an actor that you're not familiar with, it's tough to give them critiques, and so I didn't feel that way with my dad.
What do you think was the biggest thing you learned from making this film?
The biggest thing I learned was, I think, just generally growing my filmmaking skills. I don't know if there's one major thing, because I learned so much from just production design. That was the first production design that I led, and from just working in a set, kind of. I've always, for my past films, I've never really worked in just a set. It's always been outside or someone's house, and also learning editing. There's a lot of new editing techniques and sound design that I implemented in this film. So perhaps editing would be one of the major things that I learned and improved in this film, because it really raised the bar on any past projects that I've done in terms of editing and sound design. And so I had to do a lot of trial and error for a lot of the effects and editing and everything, but it all worked out quite well. And so I'm now a much better editor than I was previously.
Yeah, great. So you have another year plus of high school, but as you look forward, what do you think is going to happen with your filmmaking? And do you have any either short or long-term plans for future films?
Yeah, so as far as short-term plans, right now I'm just working on the script for another short film to be produced later this year, and I'm going to continue with my high school film program, and then this term for as far as the long-term plan, I haven't thought too much about it because I'm so caught up in high school, but I think pursuing a career in film and television would be definitely an interest. And kind of being in the film program, I have a lot of seniors. Actually, the two in my project, there were two seniors, and they're both in college now, so communicating with them and seeing how they like their college and what they do is quite interesting. And it's nice to be in the film program to see, because last year, no, 2 years ago as a freshman, I knew students, and now they'll almost be graduating college, and to see where they're going and their career choices, it's kind of a nice guidance to see the possibilities there are.
Well, clearly you're a talented young filmmaker, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. So congratulations again on this film, and thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'd now like to welcome Alex Lysette, who was the writer and director of Seeing Purple. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So first question, obviously you're not here in Naples right now, so where are you speaking to us from?
I am currently in New York City. I go to NYU now. I'm a freshman, so this is my first year. I'm dealing with Zoom University currently, but it's going well.
Yeah, good. Good. So Seeing Purple, it's a great film. It's got a great message. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to make this film?
Well, in terms of an inspiration, I would say the most direct influence was definitely the racial tension that was happening in my school district as like a whole. I come from Pennsylvania, like a rural small town in Pennsylvania, and there were a series of heavy racially charged, like violent events, especially in like even right in front of me in my school. Like I saw kids in fights, I saw just crude words being yelled all the time, and I have very close friends who are African American, and I kind of took it upon myself to try to speak up against this bigotry that was going on in my community. Filmmaking has always been something that I had used for just for fun and for kind of just like exploring storytelling, and I decided I wanted to use it for something a little bit more concrete, even if the story itself is pretty abstract.
Mm-hmm. So was this something, was there a class or a project that in particular that was the impetus for this, or was it just that you wanted to express yourself creatively and just created the film?
There is no film class at my school, so I just kind of I woke up one morning and I was like, you know what, I need to write something, and this is something that's really prevalent in the front of my mind. And so I put pen to paper, and there wasn't really an impetus for it other than just a pretty big drive to make something.
Mm-hmm. Had you done films before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've made a few, obviously. Like in the beginning of high school, they're nothing more than just like silly short films I shoot on my phone. But I was pretty big into photography in my freshman and sophomore years, so I had bought myself a camera, and I used that camera to shoot the entire film. And it was the first. I mean, I'd made films before, but it was the first like truly coherent with a script. Like edited properly, multiple stages of editing. It was the first big project, I would say, that I took part in.
Yeah. So obviously part of being a filmmaker is dealing with actors, and I imagine as a high school student that with actors that are other high school students, maybe they're friends, they're friends of yours who were involved in that?
Yeah, those are two of my best friends. They're both luckily in the theater department of my school, so they were musical kids, and so they know how to act. And it wasn't very difficult to try and communicate, especially because they were my friends, what kind of my vision was and what I wanted from them. Yeah.
Okay, good. I always wonder about that complication of all of a sudden being in charge of your colleagues.
Yeah. That also was weird. I didn't know the attitude to really take on with them, because it's strange to tell my friends what to do and have them listen.
I assume they insisted on having their own trailer and everything.
Oh yeah, private trailer, jacuzzi on the back, you know.
Excellent. So tell me about what do you think was the most significant thing you learned about filmmaking by making this film?
Scheduling, I would say. Scheduling was something that, I mean, I would say for most of high school, I was a pretty proud procrastinator. I was able to get things done last minute, and it almost bit me very, very hard in the butt on this film. The night before, I was getting things together, and one of my best friends was possibly not able to make it, and I only had this weekend to shoot it. And the location we went to was a little bit iffy in terms of when it was going to start to change colors from green to fall colors, and I thought that would have changed the environment, and it became a huge thing of thank God I got it. But at the end of the day, I was like, I need to totally reconfigure the way that I think about planning for things like this, because it's not just something I can pull together 4 hours before. I have to give it considerable thought.
Sure, that's a good lesson for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So tell me, you said you're at NYU. Are you studying film?
I am studying film, yeah.
And so do you have any sort of long-term plans for your filmmaking career?
Well, I am applying for a program to get into their business school. So I would hopefully graduate with both an arts degree and a business degree, and possibly one day be a producer of some kind or direct. I'd love to direct. I mean, everyone says they'd love to direct at this school, but that is something I could see myself loving doing and really putting my heart into for a long time.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing the film. It really is, especially for a high school student. It's obviously you've got a great career in front of you. So all the best and good luck.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And thank you to like the festival for selecting me. It really was an honor to get the email and to see the laurel. I was blown away.
Excellent. Great. Now it's my very great pleasure to introduce the writer and director of the short film APPLEBAUM from our student showcase. We have Edward Loop.
Hi.
Thanks, first of all, so much for sharing your film with us.
Sure.
Your film, well, first of all, where are you now? This is a virtual festival, but you're really not in Naples. So where are you?
Right now, I'm in the basement of a building in Athens, Ohio, which is where the film school is in Athens, Ohio. I'm actually in one of our editing suites right now, and only minutes before we started talking, I was working on the sound design of another student's film. So we're always making stuff.
So you're it's Ohio University, right? That's
Yeah.
Excellent. Good. So let's just dive into your film. It's a really, I mean, there's obviously a big kind of twist in it.
Yeah.
Midway through. How did you come up with the idea of the story, and then what did it really take to put this film together?
Well, I can tell you sometimes ideas, that's a hard question to answer, but in this case, I actually do remember specifically where the idea came from, which the first version of the story was a play, actually, which I wrote in the fall of 2016. It began, the very first draft of it was actually just an old man telling his grandson basically how to get women, right? And it was a very sort of odd story where over the course of the story, you sort of start to realize that like he's telling him the wrong advice, bad advice, basically, and harmful advice. And it was sort of a story about how these things get passed on, right? And then I wrote that, and you know, I got a good piece of advice on writing. Probably the best piece of advice I ever got on writing was a very simple piece of advice from a teacher a long time ago. And he told me, he said that there isn't a story until there are two stories. And this first draft, this old man talking to this little boy, there was only one story, really. There's only one thing kind of happening. It just didn't really work. I wasn't very satisfied. But I remember specifically, it was late at night. I was on a deadline. I was writing. I was not happy with it. And then I all of a sudden just had this idea of if there was an old man and he was sick and he was dying and his memory was going and his sense of place was going. And we learned something about him because of that he doesn't remember quite where he is and who he's actually interacting with. And then I thought, wouldn't it be kind of amazing if the first part of the story was us being with the person who takes care of him and seeing their relationship and sort of trusting him through her, right? And then I quickly realized that it could be a story, a layer of it could be that it's a friendship, and it could be a story about betrayal. And just something about the idea of, on the screen or on stage at the time, or on the screen, just seeing an older man do these things while already having a sort of relationship with him seemed very, it affected me, just even the thought of it. And then I had been writing a lot about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the dumbness of that whole thing, especially when we look back, like, historically, how foolish everybody seemed at the time. And it occurred to me that the whole thing was basically like a big dick contest, right? And it's just two nations trying to say mine is bigger than yours. And you better not use yours or else I'll use mine. And it seemed the exact kind of wrong-headed, maybe male, I don't know, but masculine attitude that would go hand in hand with a person who would do something like that. And so it seemed to make sense to talk about that in it. And actually drawing on my own life, I realized it would be interesting to frame it as a story of a person losing their virginity on the day before the world ended. There was a similar thing in my life during 2012. If you remember, everybody thought the world was going to end in 2012. So there may or may not be a similar thing that happened there. But are the pieces just sort of like added together, and seemed to work, and it's so then the rest of it was just trying to craft the dynamic between these two characters and make it all work pacing wise. It was tricky because the film is about, as a lot of it is about waiting for the thing to happen, so that can be kind of hard to actually make interesting and dramatic, but hopefully I did. I don't know.
No, it's great. I mean, and I think one of the things that I was struck by initially in knowing that it started out in its infancy as a play makes a lot of sense, because it really is dynamic between these two people, and it's about that relationship. So, and the two actors you had were both wonderful. How did you find these actors and help them to create that dynamic that really takes such a big turn?
It was definitely a lot of work. Like, we had probably gone through the whole play or the whole movie, like run it through probably 20 times before we ever turned on the camera, and then run through other parts of it even more. Manda, who plays Olivia, is a grad student performer, theater student at Ohio University, and I auditioned a bunch of women, and she connected with it very well, I thought, and she just was the best for the part. She and I get along really well. We learned through the process as well. Like, she's going to be in my next movie. Michael, who plays APPLEBAUM, Mr. APPLEBAUM, he was in a film, an Ohio University film before mine, and I had seen him in that, and I auditioned a bunch of older men for the role. I went out, I contacted every source I could think of, community theaters, this and that, and I eventually got about like a dozen guys, and of those 6, after reading the script, wanted to audition. And I remember I auditioned all of them, and first of all, Michael was the best performer. There was a lot of men who were interested in performing but maybe didn't have a lot of experience. Michael is like a 50-year veteran of the stage. He's been doing it since a teenager, and really, really knows what he's doing. But I also remember that everybody else, all of these other men, as I was auditioning them, we'd be doing the dialogue, we'd be doing this, we'd be talking about it, and they would get very cagey and kind of like nervous when we started talking about actually filming it, which I wanted to do with everybody, you know, talk about what the process of actually filming it was going to be like. And, you know, I could tell that they were very embarrassed and they were very like, you know, like uncertain about it. Like they liked the story, they wanted to participate, but they were very uncomfortable basically. But when I actually went to Michael's house to audition him, I went to his house, and before we even read, he said, okay, before we even do this, we need to talk about how it's going to be done. And he was like, very much like he wanted to know, he wanted to think about it, he wanted to know that we had a plan. And it was like very important that we talk about it. And I said, that is the person that you want on set, you know, doing that, right? You don't want somebody who's going to be weird about it, basically. You have to do it. And then to answer the last part of your question, making it work, making the two actors come together. First, we did a lot of talking through the script, and we did a lot of rehearsal. A lot of rehearsal, went through everything. And for the assault sequence, we did a lot of rehearsal. We had a choreographer and this sort of newer crew role responsibility called an intimacy coordinator come in. We choreographed everything. It was like a dance, really. It's like my elbow goes here during this bit, you turn your head that way during that bit, I put my hand here during this, and it was like all on beat. And we rehearsed that probably 15 or 20 times before the cameras ever rolled. And by the time that we actually got to filming it, that scene, it was like boring. Like we just like knew it, you know, which is where you want to be during something like that. You know, you don't want to, because there's a really very real chance it's even just enacting something, somebody could be really hurt, you know. So we were very careful about that. But you know, it's funny, it's like going through all of that really built trust in too. And so I think it helped the movie overall that they just, the two actors really trusted each other with that, you know.
So making this film in the context, I assume it was part of your educational program that this was a requirement.
Yeah.
How much, if any, input, leading issues were there with sort of in the program, especially on, you know, you're gonna have a very difficult scene like that. Is that something you have to run by?
Issues with the content?
Well, yeah, running by professors or anything, or how much freedom is there within that sort of academic context when you're putting together a film?
Well, I think there's sort of three answers to that question. First, it's a grad program, and it's a very small, it's a relatively small program. There's only like, how many? There's like 5 faculty members, student body of about 30 people. There's like 10 per class. And they are very like, and they've had to fight, like for instance, the theater school and stuff, they've had to fight for this, that they tell us right away, and they tell everybody else that they don't censor us. The movie that we want to make, the movie that we decide to make is we can make it. If we can make it, we can make it, right? So they don't censor us, but they do look at everything. They want to read every script. They want to know. And so with this, I think there's sort of 2 stages. First, was the scene justified inside the context of the movie? Is it something that was necessary and needed to be in the film? And I think after you read the story, that was obvious. Like, yes, this did need to be a part of the story, that scene. You know, in a lot of films, what they do with content like that is they turn the camera away, or they cut it out or something like that and leave it to be more suggestive thing. And for a lot of films that works. For this film, that wasn't going to work. Like, we had to actually see it. So it was justified in terms of belonging in the story. And, you know, they thought that the story was strong and the story was worth making. And so the second part of getting the school on board was really me working hard to show them how I was going to make it okay for the performers, okay on set, something that was not going to hurt anybody, like I said. And that involved coming up with a very specific plan. Like I had to write a whole thing out, that there was this contract that says like, okay, these are what are going to be necessary. These are the parts with partial nudity. These are where you're going to be touched, all that kind of stuff. Like for instance, a part that not a lot of people think about, but a part that I had to go on that contract was actually not even during the assault sequence, but during the earlier scene when Mr. APPLEBAUM sits on the toilet and pull down his pants. Like that was something that had to go on and had to be agreed to ahead of time. And so just everything had to be planned. And when when I had decided who I wanted to cast, we had already talked about it during the auditions and in emails and stuff, but I said, okay, so here's the situation. Here's what it looks like. If you don't want to agree to it, that's okay. We can change things. But here's the plan, basically, right? And I think after going through all of that, I'd also made a film the year previous that didn't have anything on screen like that, but definitely had some intense stuff. And I think that everybody sort of at that point, because I had demonstrated that I'm responsible when I make a film and that I plan everything out and that I know what I'm doing, people trusted me to do it. And I think that's just all it was about. It was just about planning. Like the wrong way to go about it would be like, let's find it on the day. You know what I mean? Like that, which sometimes, I mean, it's happened. I mean, there are stories, and that's just not the way to do something like that. You know, I'm very deliberate and I plan every part of my film, but that was a part that definitely needed to be worked out a lot ahead of time.
So speaking of plans, now that this is out in the world and it sounds like you're already working on other things, what are your future plans professionally?
Professionally, well, professionally, what I'd like to do, it's funny, it's sort of my definition of what I want to do has changed the longer I've made movies. When I was like 15, it was like, well, Steven Spielberg. I mean, that's what I want to be, Steven Spielberg.
Who doesn't?
I mean, of course I still do. I still want to be Steven Spielberg. But realistically, my plan is that I'd like to do long-form fictional storytelling in the form of movies. You know, and to me, movies can also be TV. Anything with a moving image and sound underneath that you project or watch on a screen is a movie to me. In my particular area of fascination and what I love is storytelling, fictional storytelling. And so I want to do that. And then more immediately, what do I plan to do? I'm not sure. I don't think anybody knows what they're gonna do in 6 months right now. But one day, hopefully, I will be, you know, making a feature or a season of television or something like that. That's in the future, but that's my hope.
And have you finished your program yet, or is it still ongoing?
Well, I was supposed to in March, or in April, I guess, but then a certain little thing happened, and I ended up not being able to make the film that I wanted to make. And they did, you know, they said, you know, you have an option to graduate without making film because of the craziness of the thing. But I decided I'm gonna make a film, you know, like that's what I have a script. At the time I had a location. I wanted to make a film. And so I said I would stay until I have made the film. So I'm still in the grad program right now, doing an sort of accidental extra year. But in order to make a film, basically.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing this film with us. It really was a fascinating film, and so happy to have it as part of our festival.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that you, I always feel weird. Most times when you make a film, you can say, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I don't know if enjoying is the right word for this film, but hopefully it,
Well,
I don't know.
I think it's a powerful film that really makes you think and have a strong reaction to. I think that's some of the best kind of filmmaking is that. So,
well, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, and have a great evening.
You too.
Well, welcome, and I'd like to introduce from the really fun short film Pine Mountain Overnight, the writer and director Gina Hernandez, and the co-writer, director of photography, and sound designer Chris Violet. Welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having us.
So this was it's part of the student film. You were both at Florida State when you made this, is this correct?
Yeah, we both just graduated virtually from the BFA program at Florida State.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of making the film, how it got started, and really it's such a cute story, how you came up with this story, and I'd also love to know about the lead actress who is just so perfect in this role.
Yeah, she's great. She was actually on the national Broadway, an off-Broadway tour for Annie. And she was great. She really brought a lot into the role. And it was awesome. All the cast members actually kind of became really close friends. They still hang out. They still message each other and talk with each other. So that was really cool to see happen on set. But the process for making this was was definitely very involved. We only had about 6 days to shoot it, and we kind of keeping in theme with the coming of age aspect, the aspect of changing seasons, going somewhere in a place where the main character's isolated in this high stakes social situation, but also is a situation where a creature like Bigfoot could exist. Something that I really wanted to play with this movie was kind of the concept of both the other, and then also just the complexities of how messy it is kind of growing up because of all the social dynamics and everything that kind of goes with it. And the idea is kind of based on an experience from growing up. I didn't meet Bigfoot, unfortunately, but it is kind of when everyone starts noticing changing bodies, it's how much you talk openly about it sometimes can lead to a whole variety of either assumptions or different perspectives. So it's definitely the social part of middle school. Felt really was really just a big inspiration for just the backbone of this, and kind of either seeing yourself in this creature this other like Bigfoot, and also seeing not only does I think her meeting the Sasquatch sort of represent this other feeling, but also through the course of what she did, not considering necessarily how she also sort of betrayed her friend or objectified her friend in the same way that she was going to do to Bigfoot by taking a picture or screaming, misjudging. So the whole movie is sort of about empathy and misjudgment. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Chris.
Yeah, actually, no, that's great. Yeah, so I have one kind of one thing to add to that in terms of, right, this is a film that's really about social isolation and a character that is heading into a completely new world, and battling some of these, teenage social dynamics, but also it's a world where she meets Bigfoot. So in terms of thinking about the photography and how we were going to choose our location and shoot our location, we were really thinking about two things. And one of those was we needed to create a world where it makes sense, and we need to shoot this world in the sense that it makes sense for Bigfoot to exist within the world. So we need to really emphasize the the fall foliage and the mountains, and really this deep forest setting that this character has journeyed into. So Bigfoot needs to make sense, but also what's more important emotionally for the character is that we get this feeling that she's isolated, that she's on this field trip, she's in this world where, there's this, wall around the whole film's world, and that she can't escape from it. But that's also a beautiful thing because this character has journeyed into that space, and that isolation is what is going to create her arc and help her arc along. So in terms of picking our locations and how we were going to shoot them, we really had to pick, we were a little bit limited because, we're from Tallahassee, Florida. We go to FSU, and obviously there's no mountains in Florida at all. So we decided to actually travel with the crew up to Pine Mountain, Georgia, to the bottom, right in the very, very bottom, really, of the Georgia mountains that are northern Georgia. And we really had to be, even though that there was a mountain there and there was some scenery and there's obviously some foliage the time of year we shot, we still had to be very selective in how we chose where to shoot, what lenses to use to best emphasize that there's big mountains around us, even though those mountains weren't big. We're trying to make them look as big as possible. And there's a lot of cheating. There's a lot of cheating to, really kind of create our own wilderness space that was a lot more wilderness than what we actually had at Pine Mountain.
Yeah,
Sure.
I have to say that after I saw it and knowing that you're both from Florida State, I was like, where the heck was that?
Yeah.
It really does
Definitely
look
not in
something
Tallahassee. Yeah.
of a completely different world. So congratulations on that. It was really nice.
Thank you.
So this was you're working on it at Florida State. Was this part of a graduation kinds of project, or was it just a project that you were doing on your own?
Yeah, this was both of our thesis film. We doubled up. Like you can either you specialize in your final year as like a writer director or as a cinematography specialist producing, however you have it. And so I specialize as a writer director, and then Chris as a cinematography specialist. We joined forces and kind of made this work together.
Yeah, and this is actually real quick. This is actually the second time we've been able to work with each other at FSU. Because I shot her previous film, Stage Fright. It was a horror comedy musical, and for me, that's when I realized that I really liked shooting Gina's films rather than trying to direct my own. So that's kind of what led me to Pine Mountain in the end.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I was going to ask about is as you're in school, I would imagine that there's lots of things that you're learning about various aspects of film because it's such a complicated art form. And how do you decide which direction you want to go in the world in terms of behind the cinematography versus writing, directing? Like what are the things that help make those choices for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I can answer that a little bit because for me, I came into film school, kind of still thinking that I was going to be a writer director. I was kind of still in that mode, like I'm a film director. And what I didn't realize though, going into film school was that, there's a lot more to filmmaking than just directing and being kind of the head creative of a set. There's so many, technical jobs and roles on the set that get that movie made, and it's really not the director's movie, it's really everybody's movie, in a sense. And in terms of thinking about those distinctions, one of the things I learned in school was that you have a director and you have a director of photography, and believe it or not, I did not really know that coming into film school. I did not really know the role that a cinematographer had, and so kind of as film school unfolded, as you said, one of the great things is that we get to explore a little bit, and I'm forced to write and direct early on, so I get to kind of get a taste of that and writing and screenplays. And then there's also so many opportunities where you are actually forced to do grip and electric work, on the other kind of end of the spectrum. And I think it's a really great thing because for me, those opportunities to be forced to do the more technical work is actually what made me realize that you know, and instead of being this head creative that I always thought I was, you know, I'm a director, I really realized that I like, you know, I'm much better at contributing to another director's vision by being their cinematographer, and you know, and being kind of, and it's not about creating and piloting a vision for me, it's about responding to one. So for Gina, I've always felt that, you know, I can kind of take her script and read it and then say, great, this is, I think, how we should shoot it. And that is really going forward in my life. Yeah, that's my dream still, is to, you know, I still shoot things in my free time, and cinematography is, and being a cinematographer is still my main focus because of that journey in school.
And Tina, what about you?
For me, well, just to piggyback quickly off of what Chris is saying, I think he's definitely undermining a tiny part of his own creative process too, because he was definitely not just only the cinematographer for this project.
That is true.
This was a big, this was a big, big collaboration on both parts. So, really working the story together. For me, I think I actually came into film school coming in with an animation background. I actually have I came into film school never having actually like made a film with a camera or anything. Like I came in strictly like animation, and then throughout film school, in the same way that Chris was explaining, that you basically go through each step of the filmmaking process and each job. I kind of found that I still really do enjoy animation, still would love to do it. But I found that just the story making process, all aspects of filmmaking were really intriguing to me. And I loved it really, just collaborating with other people and being able to kind of, you know, like have a project that everyone is passionate about and working on. Because that was something really cool with everybody in our class, is like everyone was super passionate about each project that we were working on. And so for me, I think I've always been a writer, and kind of coming into this film world in general, realizing like you can only enhance writing so much with, you know, you add now audio and visual techniques such as, and sound design, cinematography, like films just enhance the storytelling so much more, which made me want to pursue writing and directing. And like there's still definitely other parts of the filmmaking process that I love. Like I do really love editing, because there's actually a lot of directing in editing, you know, just kind of, you know, how to better tell the story with the choices of the takes you use, of the cast, everything. So I feel like being a writer director in film school was very helpful in just understanding filmmaking as a whole for me.
So so what's next for the two of you? I think you said you both just graduated?
Yes.
So what are your future personal and professional plans?
For me right now, everything's been up in the air because of everything that's gone on. So it honestly changes maybe each week what I decide to do. But
She tells me.
what my main goal has just been writing and saving money for like the next upcoming year. Just working and writing on the side. You can see my whiteboard in the back. I've erased it multiple times in the last few days because I'm working on writing a feature film right now. So just kind of working on that right now, and then seeing what comes next, and possibly moving to either Atlanta or LA in the next coming months, or 2021.
Yeah, for me, so, you know, full open book. I have actually been living with my parents since I graduated in May. I'm trying to do a little bit of a year where I can save on paying rent entirely, so I can just save up as much money as possible. I'm very lucky right now to actually have a full-time job out of Boston, Massachusetts, actually. So I live here in New Hampshire and commute to Boston, and I'm a videographer, kind of editor at a very small aerial production company down there. So it's been going very well, and I'm really lucky to have that full-time work, because the goal for me is to, you know, save for about a year, work there, and learn a lot more about drones and heavy lift drone production and things like that. And yeah, and then actually I have this crazy idea to go live in France for about a year probably, because something that's, you know, outside of filmmaking, I guess, something that's very important to me is kind of learning languages and you know, living abroad and being ingrained abroad for a long period of time, and so that for me is kind of on my radar before, you know, before I move out to, you know, probably LA or New York. It's kind of up in the air still, but you know, I want to get that in before I move out and get going on what will probably be a lot of, you know, freelance camera work and grip and electric work and stuff like that. So a few years away, but yeah, kind of in a limbo for now.
Okay, well, thank you both for sharing this film. It really is just it's a heartwarming. It's a wonderful film, and congratulations on it, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David, for having us.
you.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Welcome, and now we're here with the writer and director of Gasal, Raganee Basin. Raganee, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So first of all, it's a really interesting, powerful film that you've done. Can you tell us a little bit about how you developed it and how you first worked up this film?
Yes, I've always wanted to tell a story about a girl experiencing a period. I think these are the kind of stories that made me want to become a filmmaker. And I was extremely intrigued and very bothered by the whole refugee crisis and just the treatment of refugees all over the world. So that these are just two topics that I combined. It was a very arbitrary choice why I did a girl experiencing her period in a refugee camp. But I think it worked for the theme that I wanted to portray, which is how basic necessities turn into luxuries for survivors of war. And I think that's what the film is about. It's about a girl who is hustling around, cheating people, lying, and doing everything on her behalf to make ends meet and just to get one sanitary napkin. And that seems, for me, it's such a sad situation, but I'm glad that the character that I wrote and even the actress who could portray that character turned out to be less of a victim and more of a survivor. So that was always the intention behind the film. I developed it in a lab in New Zealand, which was like a day-long lab, and that lab definitely gave me a lot of insights. But other than that, I went to Greece to volunteer in a refugee camp, and there I met a lot of refugees, and that definitely informed the choices that I made in the script, because I felt that since I'm talking about a character from a different culture, I don't have a right to portray any sort of stereotype. And I definitely am a strong believer in that. So I made sure that I don't villainize any character except for the circumstances. And that is a very important choice to me. And I think something that I learned by volunteering in the camp. So I don't think I would have done that had I not gone for research. After that, I was figuring out where to shoot, and I'm in the United States currently, and so was my crew. But I just felt it was going to be impossible to shoot here because everything is so expensive. So then I went back to my home city, New Delhi in India, and I shot it on barren land in a small town very close to New Delhi. And we built a refugee camp from scratch, thanks to my production design team, which was absolutely fabulous. We were able to build a camp in a few days, and then we shot it there. And all the actors also that we cast were actually non-actors, and they are real-life refugees living in New Delhi from Afghanistan. So I think that really helped us to make it authentic. And I never gave them a script or told them much about the film, but just gave them directions on set because I wanted to be as fresh as possible, and I didn't want them to have any preconceived notions of acting and portray a certain kind of character that they already watch in movies.
So with the set, I mean, it's amazing that you created that whole set design. Was that, I mean, especially for a short film, was that difficult to do, to that level of detail that you had there?
It was. We thankfully had a good amount of budget from school. I think the entire budget of the film, including sending it to festivals and everything, turned out to be somewhere around $28,500. But I got a few grants, and the most
the thing that costed the most was the flight tickets to and fro from India to the US and the camera equipment. The rest, everything was not expensive at all, actually.
Yeah.
And we got like around 15 tents, 10 huge and 5 smaller sized. And yeah, I still wonder how my production design team did it, because they were a team of like 3 main people and a few helpers, but they just nailed it because they had to dirty every tent. They had to make it look like people were, that the tents were inhabited. So they did a great job of really transforming that barren land. Like, it was really barren. There was nothing on that land. So it was, we had like around 4 to 5 days to build that, but they just did it magically. Honestly, I got super lucky with the production design team that I had.
So, and you said all the actors were non-actors.
Correct.
How was that? How did you find them, first of all? And then what were some of the, I guess, the benefits and the challenges of working with children and non-actor children?
We found them off from the help of a casting director who knew like a casting agent that was recruiting Afghan actors, but they didn't have much experience, especially the age group that I was looking for. I was mainly looking for kids and adults, like somebody who then in their 40s, because I had to show the father and other older characters, another character that was cut in post-production. I just honestly loved working with kids. I have worked with kids in the past and I have never experienced any problem in terms of directing them despite them not knowing acting, because I strongly believe that it's easier to work with actors that are really great or people who are non-actors. Somewhere in between becomes more challenging because you have to make them unlearn a few tropes of acting, which are very easy to find when you're watching them on screen. So that was one advantage with kids, because they had no preconceived notions. They were really being themselves. So I would just have to make sure that they don't overdo it because they were a bit excited. But with the lead character, GHAZAAL, I'd say the first time that we auditioned her, she was quite shy and she was not really doing much and she was sitting in one spot. And then with just a little bit of direction, she just transformed like within an audition. So I knew that she's great at taking direction. And there was something in her eyes that really spoke to me and really fit the character. So I think with kids, they're so honest as it is and so innocent that helps direct them on screen. And I would say that the kids were really having fun. I remember there was a scene where there were a lot of background kids, the scene in which she sells the socks. And then we needed few kids for the scene inside the shed. But there were kids who kept playing outside. And in between the shot, when I was shooting inside, one kid came to me and she was like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to give you one last take and please nail it. And he was not even in the shot. And he was not in the shot for like more than a couple of hours. But he felt like he was being shot when he was playing outside. So just the innocence of kids was so much fun, and I'm glad that they had a lot of fun. And I remember the day when all the background actors and most of the supporting cast was also leaving. It was, I don't know, I felt very overwhelmed. We were staying like a family in the ashram where we shot. So yeah, it was, I think working with kids for this film, and especially these kids, was the best part.
So, you're obviously starting out in your film career, and this was a great short film. What do you think was the biggest thing that you learned about either yourself or filmmaking that you think you're going to take from this experience to your next project?
That's a good question. I would say that I think my biggest learning lesson was to work more on the script, because honestly, we got quite lucky with the way we structured it. First, there was another character who acts like a motherly figure to GHAZAAL, and that it ends with her relation with that woman. But it just felt so much packed into a short film that it made no sense. And the ending is actually a wrong take. So she was never supposed to laugh in that take, but a dog passed by, so she ended up laughing. And that's the only way we found an ending. If we didn't have that wrong take, we wouldn't have an ending, because that scene was actually in the middle of the film. So thankfully we could work around it. But I would say my biggest learning lesson is to work a lot on the script in pre-production. Yeah. And by script, I mean, like, I don't think short films need to have a 3-act structure or even a character arc. It's just that moment that needs to be explored. And honestly, a lot of people have told me, most people have told me that they do not like the ending. And there are very few people who really loved it. And I still really like it because I feel it's a little bit of a circle of how she just laughs at the end, thinking of all the mischievous things that she's done. Because throughout the film, you see that she's a child who's acting as an adult because of her circumstances. But when she's playing with the burger at the end and just relaxing, knowing that she's done things that are technically wrong, but she's still relishing her burger, I think that for me is very heartwarming. But I know a lot of people did not get it and did not like it either. But I still do not regret it. I would always end the film with this ending, even if I had to remake it.
So what's next for you? Do you have other films in the works? What's upcoming?
Yes, I made a film in January to 2020, but then it should be completed hopefully by next month. We've been procrastinating a lot because of COVID and just not able to work much in post-production. And then I'm working on another short film that I hope to make with my family, with my mom, dad, and my sister in India when I go back, probably in December. It's about, sorry about that. It's about a family of 4, and I'll be casting myself, who try to record a happy anniversary wish for the 5th member of the family, but are unable to do it because everybody's ego comes in the way. So it's literally a one-shot film, like one take, and we just set up the camera and enact a little bit like a play. So I'm super excited to do that because I have always been blackmailed by my family to cast them. Otherwise, they would not validate me as a filmmaker. I'm glad that I can get to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing the film. It really is it's a lovely, touching film, and
thank you so much.
A spectacular job with it. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
I'd now like to welcome the director and co-director of JITTERBUGS, Marie McDonald, and Michael Verestiki. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks. So thanks for sharing this film with us. It's a really cute animated film. Can you talk a little bit about how you made it in school? You were at the Savannah SCAD, the school.
The one that everybody went to, right? Yeah, SCAD. Yes. Well, yeah, it's a student film.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to make this particular film?
Well, for me, since I wrote it, I think it was mostly due to the fact that my grandfather, I grew up with him. I spent a lot of my time with him. And I noticed that a lot of people I talked to would say how their grandparents were in retirement homes. Mm-hmm. And it kind of interested me to see kind of like the aesthetic behind that. And it's kind of sad to think that anybody would be in that situation. So I kind of wanted to shed some light on that and make it something fun, and also opening people's eyes to see that some people are in that predicament. Mm-hmm. And then we added spiders for fun.
Yeah, where did the idea of the spiders entertain?
Yeah, that was just us. I don't know.
And was this part of a project at school, or was it sort of just an independent film you were working on?
It was a project at school. We had to each pitch stories in our senior year, and they chose about, geez, how many was it? It was like 30 out of, I think, 250 of them. Mm-hmm. And for some reason they chose ours because my pitch was weird, but it turned out good. So I'm happy they chose it.
So were you studying specifically animation, or was just animation one part of the filmmaking education that you're getting at SCAD?
We both studied animation. He's actually more of the animator though. I just did production mostly. So I did scheduling and dealing with people, and he was the lead animator and kind of director of animation. So, but animation was our major, yes.
Yeah, excellent. So what was, were there any tricky things? It seems like with, especially animation these days, there's amazing things that you can do with perspective and movement and liveliness. Were there any things that were particularly complicated for this film?
Was there anything that wasn't complicated is the better question. Besides just, you know, there's always, anytime you work on a team, there's always going to be hard times with that, with certain people who don't pull weight. But not only that, technical aspects were the biggest thing. I mean, shoot, him, what did you have issues with the animation?
Part of probably like how some of the systems were running a little slow. And we had a team as well where we didn't have much experienced animators. Most of them were more like character designers, which is why our characters look very dynamic and stylized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fur was fun. That's why you notice that there's no fur in the film. That didn't happen.
Our team wasn't picked by us. It was like randomly selected students that joined. So that was why it was a little tricky to get our film done.
Yeah.
So it was so you did, it was that must be complicated to not be able to choose.
Yeah.
You still love them all. They're all still really fun, but they just kind of throw a random group of people at you who don't really, the specialties that they possess, like they don't always suit your film. So it made it interesting. It was a really fun time. It was a good mix. Good people.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to make this film?
Oh,
it was like 9 months.
9 months, right?
In total, yeah, because it was 3 quarters. So yeah, 9 months. Seemed like it was like 9 years. Yeah, it was 9 months.
So were there, what do you think was the biggest bit of learning that you had about filmmaking through the process of making this film?
Shoot. Probably, honestly, is you have to learn how to get along with people. Regardless, it's not even so much, I mean, it's not hard to get along with people. That's the easy part, but also it's just being able to correct or fix an issue without stepping on someone's toes to the point where nobody gets along. You have to know how to really get people to work together well, because otherwise, I mean, we saw with a lot of senior films, a lot of them fell apart just for that reason. People just didn't know how to handle each other and couldn't get along. You really have to put a different group of people together and respect each other's differences and work with it. But
that's what I was thinking.
What was that? Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's exactly what I was gonna say as well. It's communication.
Yeah, people.
Yeah. So when you're doing animation, when you're building these characters, do you actually have live modeling or anything like that, or is it truly just all computerized? I mean, to get the perspective, do you pre-create shots and things like that in the real world before you do them?
Well, we started out with storyboards with 2D drawings, and then we implemented those into 3D space in our software. And then for the animation process, we video reference like live footage of each character, like whether they're walking or the way they run. The spiders, however, we looked up so many references from online. Just
can't really act that out.
Like toys that like move, and
a lot of scary videos.
Some feature films that probably had spiders in it.
Yeah.
But we try to do our best to like copy reference from photo and
mocap too.
Video.
We use motion capture for some of the reference. So anytime you see the old woman dancing or moving around, just remember that's like a 26-year-old man. So
that was actually me.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, excellent. So you touched on that your own grandparents has partly inspired it. There was that last sort of clip at the end where it's sort of in memory of there was a bunch of people. Were those grandparents of other people on your team?
Yes. Yeah, we included everyone's grandparents who had they were a big influence on everything. We interviewed and talked to everybody, so it was good.
Did anyone's families respond? Are there people who still have grandparents are around get a chance to see this? And
oh yeah. Yeah. Our viewing or our showing in the SCAD theater was mostly, I feel like the older people were all laughing the hardest. So yeah.
But so and have you both graduated then?
Yes.
And what are your future plans in filmmaking and professional life?
Get out of I'm working right now. I do 3D modeling for aircraft carriers. So I want to get out of that because it's not exactly what I went to school for, but it's a start. So I want to go into production in the future. And
I would like to be an animator for a feature film company.
Yeah.
Whether it's either Pixar, Disney, the big boys.
Yeah, whatever happens.
And where are, I should have asked at the beginning, where are you talking to us, where are you now?
Virginia, Yorktown, Virginia. So around Newport News.
Okay, excellent. Great. Well, it really was it's a fun film, and
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching it.
Oh, of course, and our audiences sure are going to love it. It's just a lot of fun. So congratulations and best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much.